The story of power and politics in Hausaland after the Sokoto Jihad is far more complex than most people today realize. At its heart is a question that is rarely asked. Why did Uthman Danfodio, after his victory, deny Hausa people any political leadership and hand the entire ruling structure to Fulani elites? The answer lies in the ideology of the jihad leaders themselves, and it's confirmed by historical records from the very heart of the caliphate. After the jihad, which was largely directed against established Hausa Muslim states, Uthman Danfodio became the supreme political and religious authority. Now, you might think that since many Hausa scholars and leaders supported his movement, they would be rewarded with positions of power. But that's not what happened. Instead, Danfodio gave all leadership roles to his sons, his brothers, and loyal Fulani clans. This wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate policy. So, why were Hausa leaders completely shut out? The respected historian Wazir Kano Abubakar Dokaji, a Fulani royal himself, explained it perfectly in his book, Kano Ta Debo Sigari. He wrote that the political system created by Sultan Muhammadu Bello, Danfodio's son, was what Europeans would call an aristocracy, rule reserved for the purest lineage. And in the Sokoto Caliphate, that pure lineage was Fulani. Simply put, leadership was seen as the exclusive right of the Fulani. They believed they were more pious, more righteous, and therefore more deserving of authority. Hausa Muslims, who had practiced Islam for centuries before the jihad, were often labeled with the derogatory term Habi, which implied they were pagans or spiritually corrupt. Once Fulani armies conquered the Hausa kingdoms, they took every throne. They never considered sharing or returning power. Why? First, they genuinely believed their practice of Islam was morally superior and feared that Hausa Muslims were impure enough to rule. Second, they held the conviction that political authority belonged only to the most righteous, which they defined as themselves. They saw themselves as a spiritually elevated class, destined to lead. This entire system was cemented by Sultan Muhammadu Bello, who formalized the doctrine of Fulani political supremacy over Hausa society. And for the next 200 years, Hausa people became subjects in their own homeland, not rulers. This political maneuvering even reshaped the very map and identity of the region. After Uthman Danfodio's victory, he divided the conquered territories. His son, Muhammadu Bello, took control of the central lands like Katsina, Kano, and Zazao. His brother, Abdullahi of Gwandu, was given the western frontiers, including Kebbi and Nupe territories. Later, a rivalry developed between Bello and his uncle Abdullahi. It was during this internal Fulani conflict that new labels were created. Bello started calling Abdullahi's territories the Banza Bakwai, or the illegitimate seven, to belittle them. At the same time, the core lands under Bello's direct control became known as the Hausa Bakwai, the legitimate seven. These terms weren't ancient Hausa classifications. They were political propaganda invented by Fulani rulers during a family feud. This completely debunks the modern myth that these divisions represent some ancient ethnic structure. Now, you might wonder how we can be so sure about all of this. The evidence comes from an undeniable source, Wazir Kano Abubakar Dokaji. Think about his position. On his father's side, he was the grandson of Debo, the Fulani founder of Kano's ruling dynasty. On his mother's side, he was a direct descendant of Sultan Bello himself. He was Fulani royalty through and through. When a man of this status confirms that the Fulani monopolized all power, that Hausa people were intentionally excluded, and that the entire system was designed as a Fulani aristocracy, his words carry immense weight. He wasn't an activist trying to stir up trouble. He wrote these facts in his history of Kano, never imagining a future where his words would be used to challenge the official narrative. His testimony is unfiltered, honest, and irrefutable. The structure of the caliphate was highly centralized. The Sultan of Sokoto was the supreme ruler. He could appoint or fire any emir in any city. Every year, all local leaders had to travel to Sokoto to pay homage, bringing taxes, tributes, and gifts as a sign of their submission. Hausaland was transformed into a centralized empire, controlled by Fulani rulers and served by the Hausa populace. Understanding this history isn't about creating division today. It's about restoring historical clarity. The Fulani dominance over Hausa political life was a deliberate system built on an ideology of superiority and the exclusion of the indigenous leadership. No people can truly move forward with dignity without first reclaiming the truth of their own past. Thanks for watching. If you found this history insightful, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more.